Testing. Can you all hear me in the back okay? Yeah, I got some head nods. You can barely hear me. You can barely hear me now. All right, we're going to test to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. Good. Sorry if there's feedback. I'm going to get used to this, I promise. All right, thank you everybody for coming tonight. My name is Jay Human, and I'm one of the founding members of the Marysville Community Coalition. It fills me with great joy to see so many of you here, it really does. And I hope you will find this event both informative and an excellent opportunity to connect and build relationships with our community. Our mission is to empower and connect our community through a commitment to transparency, trust, and collaboration. We strive to serve as a beacon of information, fostering open communication between our community members and institutions. Our primary goal is to rebuild and strengthen relationships between elected officials and residents by providing a platform for transparent dialogue. First, I would like to thank any key stakeholders attending tonight. We extended invitations to many of our community leaders, legislators, and representatives, and it is always a pleasure to have them join us despite their busy schedules. Your presence is invaluable in helping us build stronger relationships within our community. Tonight's event will include 2 presentations, followed by a time for questions and open dialogue. While we will do our best to respond to your questions tonight, there are times when we may not have the immediate answers. For questions we cannot or should not answer on the spot, we will forward them to the appropriate individuals or entities. Although we can't always guarantee a response, we are committed to reporting back to the community about any replies, or lack thereof, we receive. A few additional housekeeping items. Please be aware that children are welcome to attend these events, so we ask that everyone be mindful of their presence when speaking. Remember, the Marysville Community Coalition hosts these events without financial backing, and our group consists of everyday community members just like you. We appreciate your patience with any technical difficulties, presentation mishaps, or nervousness from your speakers tonight. I did put in here, it was just referring to me, but yeah. we talked before this. Lastly, and most importantly, please be respectful. It's natural to have differing views and perspectives, and that's okay. What is not okay is being rude or impolite when others are speaking. At the end of the day, we are all part of this community working together to create positive change. Please assume positive intent in all interactions. All right, enough for me for now. I'm delighted to introduce a wonderful and very recent graduate of the Marysville School District, who also served as our former school board school board student representative, vice president. Throughout the year, his voice has provided valuable insight into how students feel about various issues. And through his consistent attendance, thank you, he has become a great advocate for future students to step into representative roles. Please give a warm welcome to Jimmy Faria. Faria.
Thank you. All right, so, need the slides. Yes. Awesome. Okay. So I have a presentation about the school, student school board representatives, and some of our experiences with the district. And so yeah. Next slide. Part 1 is going to be like an introduction, background, and some silencing and intimidation experience from the district. So a bit of background first. Student School Board representatives started in the spring of 2023 with the goal of bringing the voice of students directly to the school board. We did this by participating in board discussion before they voted on items and at the end of the meeting. Board reps were started after the 2022 club policy protests. I and several other students talked to the board president at the time, and it was explicit that our role was to bring student opinion to the board. In our first meeting, I expressed my happiness of having student opinion on the board, and the president agreed. So our advisor was Jody Runyon, the communications and public relations director, and I feel there may have been a conflict of interest with her role as both making the district look good to the public and as the advisor to us student reps. They called us into multiple private meetings with different members of the district staff for various dubious reasons. The feeling of these meetings was also always very tense, and we reps felt intimidated. They also scheduled pre-meetings where we would ask questions about the agenda and give our thoughts to just Jody and some directors. They scheduled these meetings without asking us about it, and they ignored our wishes, and I'll come back to these things. So in this video, next slide, sorry. During the meeting on September 6th, they were passing a temporary union contract since the district didn't communicate well with the union, and they took too long agreeing to a contract. I asked a very simple question about why the raises were what they were. The simple answer just turned out to be the raises were going up at the rate of inflation. Then Dr. Robbins cut me and the HR director off in a very condescending and controlling manner. Press next.
So I guess my question is, how did you arrive at these raises?
So I did not.
But 1 second, Mr. Cooper.
How did these come about?
James, would it be okay, because right now we're talking about collective bargaining, and I know when I was in high school, I don't know that I had many people talk to me about collective bargaining. So would it be okay if we actually did a 2x2, which means 2 board members meet with 2 people from admin so we can explain it all? Because this is quite a bit to digest. So is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate, and I really like the idea of doing 2x2s with our student reps. I think that'll be great. And again, I'm looking forward to things being more timely, because the longer it takes, the more rumors and untruths and sometimes just downright lies come out. So rather than have that happen, let's just get together. We're doing this in the best interest of children. We need our staff. Staff need jobs. They need us. The children need us. Let's just get this worked out so we can keep things going. So, Mr. Cooper, thank you so much for working to get these things resolved. I know that you came behind work that was already done, and I know that can be a challenge, and I know that is a challenge. So thank you for plugging in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cooper. At this time, I would entertain a motion.
Like, I was asking a simple question with a simple answer, and he did all of that. He also took over and ended the entire discussion, even though we weren't necessarily done with it. So that was just very condescending. But anyway, in the private meeting that we held afterwards to explain unions, the HR director did a rundown of how union bargaining works, which I already pretty much knew, so that was fine, whatever. But at that meeting, I asked what questions we were allowed to ask, and he explained that we had to be more measured in our questions and statements, since we were up there and we shouldn't show favoritism, and we should just be professional about what we said. And that is an okay piece of advice to give, but let that be our baseline of what the district was telling us to do. Next slide. So after some of these pre-meetings that were held, or after some of these private meetings and a couple of pre-meetings that were held, we no longer wanted them to happen for a few reasons. 1, in those private meetings, they could pressure and silence us into not speaking our mind during the public board meetings. 2, if we asked all of our questions during the pre-meeting, then we couldn't really ask them during the public meeting, and then we are pointless. We ask those questions so that the community and the board can hear our answers. Our opinions, thoughts, and feedback, Our opinions, thoughts, and feedback can't be heard during the meeting, diminishing their effect. And 4, we already review and go through the agenda before meetings anyway, and we can ask simple questions that don't need to be asked at the public meeting over email. There's no reason to hold a private meeting when we just can answer something over email, or ask. These may seem like extreme concerns, but the vibes of the previous meetings have been very tense and intimidating, and as we'll see later, we were right to think this way. So the next pre-meeting. just for some context, at this meeting, the board was going to present a new public comment policy that would relegate non-agenda subjects to the end of the meeting and limit it to 10 minutes. At the pre-meeting, I read Jody Runyon a statement of that I prepared that was basically just expressing my concerns of the policy and how I think it could be changed. And yeah, so I was going to read it, but we don't really have time. So no, I didn't. Let me find my place. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. So her response to me, just expressing or just saying this thing I was going to say at the meeting, which was my opinion, she said that she loved what I wrote, but she wanted me to send it to Jane so that the superintendent and board president could see it. She said that she did not want me to say this at the meeting and that our role was only one of advocacy and that we couldn't be adversarial. She also said that she didn't want the audience to swarm me or get me to jump on that bandwagon, whatever that means. At another meeting, she said that she didn't want me to become a talking head for the community and that we had to remain objective, which I do. I told her this. These are all my own thoughts and opinions and genuine concerns. It's also very condescending for her to think that I can't think for myself. She said that in our role, we can't really give our opinion and that we can only ask clarifying questions. The point of all of this, from her perspective, in my opinion, is that she's the leader of public communications and relations, so she doesn't want us to make the district look bad. However, making the district look as shiny as she can muster is not conducive to genuine discourse and improvement. This is a video of what I said during the meeting, and I turned my speech into a more measured version of expressing concern, but it covered basically all the same points as the speech. This led to a good discussion of the policy and is the exact reason why we should be able to speak about these things during the meeting instead of just privately sending in comments. We don't really have time to watch the whole video, but it ended up being a very good and productive conversation because I and the community were able to hear some more of the reasoning behind the proposed change, and the board was able to hear, discuss, and consider an opposing viewpoint. What they ended up doing was reducing the maximum speaking time from 9 to 6 minutes for one person and not change anything else. So it was a very productive conversation that helped things change. Also, I'd like to note that during that meeting, I said in a similar cautious manner that I didn't think the superintendent's contract should be renewed because he still had 2 years on it and that he should be able to prove himself capable in those years. And Jody's response to that was after the meeting, she just told me, we'll talk, presumably at the next pre-meeting. The end of pre-meetings.
Thanks. I've been thinking about this meeting for.
Oh yeah, it's that. So we as student reps really didn't want to have another pre-meeting because we had already heard enough. Jody didn't want our opinions, and that was that. So we just avoided them. At first, we gave excuses as to why we couldn't make the meetings while also expressing that we didn't think they were necessary, so we were able to delay it. But they kept rescheduling them without asking us for times we were available or acknowledging our desire to not have the meetings. We finally just didn't show up, but a bunch of them were sick that week, so I don't know if they realized. They never said anything to us, but they also didn't schedule any new pre-meetings, so I don't really know what happened. Next slide. So background on the policies that I was going to revise. The policies I was going to revise were part of my civil action project, which required that everyone in my AP government class make a change in their community. I gave a different version of this presentation to my class about a month ago. Anyway, I'll just briefly go over some of the relevant changes I made. The main thing I added was an advisory vote. Basically, before the board votes on an item, the student reps give a vote of pro, con, or abstain. I added this to clarify the opinion of student reps and ensure that their thoughts are heard. I also added the word opinion under the student reps' duties in the policy itself. I also made it clear that the schools would choose the student reps instead of the district, mainly to streamline the process and get better representatives, since the people working with students every day in school would be the best ones to know who would be good reps. Another thing I added was a point under the responsibilities section that says reps should work to inform the student body about things going on in the district and work to receive more feedback from students, to act as a liaison between students in the district. I also fixed a bunch of grammatical errors. It was bad. There were so many. Anyway, in the future, it's just a thought I had. Maybe the board could be put in charge of the student reps instead of the district, but I haven't tried to figure out how that system could work. But it could prevent some of the intimidation that we experienced. Next slide. Oh, yeah. So after I was confident with my policy, I emailed Claudette Rushing, our general counsel, on April 23rd to ask how I should move forward with the proposals, since she was in charge of policies. I said, hello, as you know, I've been working on revising policies 1250 and 1250P, and I feel that they are in a place where I'm comfortable submitting them to the policy committee. Could you include it in the next round of policies that go out, or just submit them by themselves? My timeline is getting it passed at the board before the end of May. Also, would you be able to walk me through the entire process of adding it to the agenda? Thank you. Next slide. Then she says, thanks, this is great. Let me run this by the superintendent. Next slide. The like of this process at this time is to allow the superintendent to take a look to see if he wants to move this forward for the board. I'm waiting to hear back on that step. Can you give me a reasoning for this? I've worked on this for months with support from multiple board members, and it is critical for my AP Golf class. And then she says, hello, you will need to check in with Dr. Robbins on that.
There you go.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's right, yeah. I was just reading, I didn't even pay attention. And then she says, hi James, I sent your work to Superintendent Robbins, and at this time, he does not foresee being able to take it to the board for approval. Is there anything else we can give you for this project? And I was like, can he give me reasoning? Why? And then need to check in with him. So then I emailed him, and I gave him this nice long paragraph. Hello, over the last 6 months, I have worked on revising Student Representative Policy 1250 and 1250P as part of my civil action project for my AP Government class, with the support of several board members, students, and my teachers. I wanted to revise it so that the student body's voice could be heard, and to and so that our position would be more effective and useful. It would also provide a valuable lesson for me and my classmates of how to interact with public boards and how to participate in their community. If you could provide your reasoning for not letting this policy at least be presented to the board, and if you have any other options for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Next slide. In response to that, he says, student reps do not dictate board meeting agenda items. I look forward to your recommendations. We'll go from there. First of all, that's why I asked Claudette and you about adding it to the agenda, like to get your input on it. I wasn't trying to add it myself or something. And then second of all, he looks forward to seeing my recommendations. Like Claudette said she showed them to him and he said no, but now he's saying he hasn't seen them or something. And third of all, why is this email so rude and blunt? Like this is probably the most confusing email I've ever received in my life, and it's only like 3 sentences long. And then that right there is the professional way of expressing the confusion I just laid out. Next slide. And then next slide. And then he says, haven't seen the edits. Send them to me via Jane.
Oh, that one. There you go.
Yeah, this was the confusion that I just expressed. I thought it was on a different side. My bad. Okay. Okay, Mom. Bye. I'm aware of that. I was hoping you could submit them to you or the policy committee, and that they would be able to take the policies into consideration. I was under the impression that Claudette showed the policies to you, and you decided not to move forward with them. And that was my professional way of expressing confusion. I just like, next slide. Then he says, haven't seen the edits. Send them to me via Jane. Thanks. So, next slide. Oh, okay, I'm very sorry. I thought that Claudette would show them, she sent them to you. I'll send them to Jane now. And then I give this nice long paragraph to Jane that explains the policies I gave to Robbins, and I also explained the situation to her, and it said, I'm not sure how that miscommunication happened. Then radio silence. Remember, that entire conversation was on April 26th. Then, out of nowhere, next slide, May 20th, 1:13 p.m., Jane emails me and asks if I want to present my policy at that night's board meeting. And so I did. Next slide. So that was an interesting experience in how a lot of people have found communicating with the district to be. And yeah, so that was pretty much my presentation. I'll just give some follow-up for it. After I gave a presentation on May 20th, Claudette and I presented my policy for first reading on June 3rd. The second reading and final passing were delayed at the last meeting because Claudette couldn't be there, but hopefully it can be passed soon. I would like to thank Directors Krebs and Davis for their help throughout this project. They advised me and helped me through revising the policy when I asked for feedback, and they backed me up if I needed it. So thank you to them for that. I would also like to thank the community for your passion in fighting the good fight to do what's best for the district and the kids. It really means a lot. Stay strong and keep fighting. I'll be there with you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Oh, I forgot that was there.
That's okay. You have questions?
Yeah, I know you don't speak for the other reps, but I'm just curious if the other reps didn't attend as often because of all this stuff that was happening.
Will you restate the question so folks online can hear it?
Okay. Yeah, so she asked if the other reps didn't attend meetings after all this occurred because of that. I don't think so, because they were just very busy and they were had a lot of things going on in their private lives. But we had a private Instagram group chat and they were thinking similar thoughts to I was. They were not happy with the situation. So they would have kept coming, but they also were disgusted by things going on with me. So, any others? Yes.
My question has to deal with when your board started. Before that, were you part of the superintendent's student advisory council? Okay.
So she asked if I was part of the superintendent advisory council, and I was.
I was part of the parent advisory. That's what I was asking.
Yes. Yeah, so she said she was part of the parent advisory council. So how it used to work, or how the first group of us reps were elected, is that we participated in the superintendent advisory council. So they just, at the beginning of, I think, 2023, they sent out emails to a bunch of students, and then if people were interested, they applied and got on the council where we could talk to the superintendent. And then at the end of the year, not as many people were left, and then some of the people from that remaining group were interviewed by the board and selected. Now, I don't even know if they're doing that this year. Are they? Do you know? Are they still doing it? Okay, they are still doing it. However, that's kind of a long process, and I feel a more effective way of selecting students is to go to the schools and get feedback from counselors, teachers, people in the schools who would better select people other than the small group in the advisory council. So, yes.
Were you able to ever attend a work study session with the school board?
Was I able to attend a work study session? Do you mean the parts before the meeting or the executive sessions?
No, I know you can't attend the executive session, but no, before the work study when they get down to the nitty gritty sometimes.
Yeah, if I couldn't make those in time, then I usually listened to the Zoom meeting recording while I was getting ready and on my way. So I was able to hear like a majority of them, not all of them, but yeah.
I will also clarify that anybody can attend those working sessions.
Right.
That is open to the public.
I didn't know they have a way of making you feel very comfortable. And that's what I'm trying to find out.
Okay.
How comfortable were you?
Oh yeah, I was plenty comfortable. I didn't feel any intimidation to not go to the work study meetings. I was busy, had school and stuff, so oftentimes I just didn't have time after school to get to the hour earlier parts. So, any other questions? Doesn't look like it. All right, moving on.
All right, thank you, Jimmy. Really appreciate it. All right, so our second and final presentation of the night is really essentially to take everybody through a timeline. We're going to kind of start in the middle of the 2022-23 school year and take you through some events that have basically landed us where we are. We do have a pretty extensive timeline. We are not going to go over every single bullet point in this timeline. We're going to hit high level stuff, but please read through after we finish. If there's any specific points in time that you would like us to revisit and answer questions, we're happy to do so. All right, and here's Courtney Ramirez.
A little bit.
My name is Courtney Ramirez. I work for the Pilchuck Uniserve Council. I'm the union representative for the Marysville Education Association, so the teachers that work in the Marysville School District. And I work under the direction of Becky Roberts, who's right here, the MEA president. And Becky and I, as well as a lot of our members and bargaining team, have been dealing with the school district's budget for a really long time at this point. You can see, can we go to the next slide? You can see we created a timeline. It begins in January. I was not present in January because I was just coming back from maternity leave. So my experience kind of comes in a little bit later in the spring. However, we just want to point out that on 2/27 of 2023, there was enrollment projections created by the ex-CFO of the school district, Dave Cram. I found that they had projected enrollment at 9,344. I didn't find this out until about a month ago after receiving a lot of public records requests from the district, where this document was embedded in some attachments that I had received. And that kind of sparked some questions as to why was it projected to be at this enrollment number when our current budget is at 9,815 students. So if we were reducing, we knew that student enrollment was going down. I don't know why we went from February all the way over to August by adding 500 students. So anyways, moving into March, MEA meets with the district to discuss possible concessions within the Marysville Education Association collective bargaining agreement. They wanted to meet with us to say that they were worried that they were going to have a $6 million deficit and they didn't have any way of recouping those funds. We met, I think, 4 different times with our bargaining team. And within those meetings, we asked many questions that we had, given that we have research analysts at WA who look at the district's finances that are reported to OSPI. So the information that we receive and present to the school district of what our understanding is of the budget is based solely off of the information that the school district has provided to the state. Throughout those meetings, we could not get a good picture of what the districts knew about their own budget. Dave Cram had left at that point. They had hired this consultant team called the Morales Group. The Morales Group kind of fixed the way that the interim finance director had done some of the budgeting for the month through the end of the 22-23 school year. And they stated that the way in which she was budgeting was creating a lot of confusion and making it seem as though that they were going to end in a negatively, essentially. So then we go to 4/26. They adopt the reduced educational program for the following school year, stating now a $12.7 million deficit. During that same summer, the school district did what's called a budget extension. So they needed to extend or increase the amount of money that they were slated to spend for the 22-23 school year by $10 million, because indeed they did not reduce in the 22-23 school year. They overspent by $10 million. So that took away $10 million from our ending fund balance, which then went to paying for overages from the year prior. In July, on July 10th, that's when school district preliminary budgets are due to OSPI. That's where you kind of submit what your rough staffing estimates are, your rough enrollment estimates are, the money that you know is coming, the grants that you know are coming. And at that point in time on that document, which is called an F-195, the enrollment jumped to 9,749 students. At that same point in time, which goes to 6/20, I was working with WA Research, and we noticed that not only did the student enrollment increase, but they also increased the number of staff that they were projecting to have for the next school year, for the 23-24 school year. However, as you can see, in April, they adopted a reduced educational program. And that also in that year, they riffed around 90 teachers. Give or take.
It was 43 teachers and then there were.
So there was 43 teachers cut, and then there was additional 45 teachers who either retired or resigned. So we had 90 less certificated staff. At the same time, they also cut almost all of the paraeducator hours. So they really did a huge cut. So it doesn't make any sense to be like, why would you be increasing your staffing for this school year when you just cut a lot of staff? And you're estimating that we have more students. So that didn't make a lot of sense. So we contacted Dr. Robbins with questions about the budget, and I don't believe that we ever got a response from him. Becky continued to tell Dr. Robbins that we can't do concessions at this time because you don't have an accurate picture of how much money you have, and we can't take concessions out of our members' collective bargaining agreement because you don't know what your numbers are. We're not going to give up things in the CBA because you don't know your numbers. So, okay, sorry. So July 27th, we start sending information requests to the district, asking them what have you spent within your materials, supplies, and operating costs, because the budget was also inflated for the next school year. We never get a response. Then on August 3rd, the district announces that they're in binding conditions. Then August 4th, they claim that now they have a $28 million deficit. Then on 8/10, the district unilaterally took away clock hours for instructional staff. So teachers and some classified staff were able to do professional development, that they can do certain classes in a certain amount of hours that then go into these credits. And the credits are on the salary schedule where you have your bachelor's with XYZ credits in these different columns, and it goes on. So you can earn credits towards your like certificate renewal and towards, you know, moving up the pay scale, because if you don't, then it's kind of a slow process. And it's something we want educators to be educated on, the things that students need to learn from that is mandated from the state. So it's a really positive thing. And almost, I know every other school district in the state of Washington provides clock hours. And Lisa Gonzalez told us that this was considered double dipping. And why would we provide our teachers a way to earn more money on the pay scale? So on August 18th, the district receives a response from OSPI approving their binding conditions and their now reduced deficit of 17.5. Because in between August 18th and the previous $28 million deficit on August 4th, we contacted OSPI and said, why is the district having so many, like the FTE is inflated by hundreds of staff, hundreds. And we said, the numbers don't make sense. Like, why would they inflate that? It seems weird. So then without any conversation with MEA or with OSPI, the district then reduces the number of certificated and classified staff that they're planning to have. However, they may have reduced the actual number on the sheet, but they did not fix the expenditure amount for the cost of those staff. So you have less staff, more expenditures. So it just created this really wonky budget that wasn't making any sense. So on 8/15, we send more requests for information, and we're still pushed away by Lisa Gonzalez, claiming that she needed to meet with Alvin Cooper because that's the only way she would meet with us, and that we needed to figure out a date. August 11th, we request a meeting. August 22nd, we request another meeting and we CC the board president at the time, who was Paul Gallivan. Finally, on August 26th, Lisa Gonzalez responds to MEA with irrelevant information. She took the request that we had made in July and just kind of put some words together that didn't make any sense as to how districts actually budget for the next school year. And so it was really a moot point. So on August 28th, the school district adopts their 23-24 budget with a $17.5 million deficit, regardless of the individuals who came to say, hey, this budget is not right. You guys need to redo this budget, but it was still adopted. August 31st of 2023 was the end of the 22-23 school year. On September 21st, we send another request for information to seek why the budget was the way that it was. And then on another report of that F195 budget document that gets submitted to OSPI, we then realized the final budget had another increase to student enrollment. It went up to 9,815, which is where it stayed. And then September 1st, school starts. September 26th, Lisa Gonzalez finally attends, she finally responds to our meeting requests and says that she'll meet with us on October 4th, and she's going to bring all of the information that we've been asking for. Do you want to, are we tagged?
You can read the rest of it.
Okay, so then on August 4th, we meet with her. It was myself, Becky, and Alvin Cooper, and she brought her slide that she presented to the school board to adopt the budget that had the random student enrollment numbers with no backing to why the numbers were the way that they were. She didn't answer any questions that we had regarding their inflated budget. We were ultimately left with nothing. So then on October 26th is when MSD finally closed the 22-23 books, and it gets submitted to OSPI to be checked. And in that report, they reported a $9.8 million ending fund balance.
There's more to come on that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna focus on the green dots here a little bit to kind of intersperse some additional events that brought in high cap, so the highly capable program for our students in the district. On October 2nd, they had a board meeting and we heard from the director of categorical programs, Brandon Moeller. He presented essentially a proposal to change significantly the high cap program for our kids due to some state legislative changes to that policy that really had to do only with making assessments more equitable. It had nothing necessarily to do with the types of services that needed to be provided or anything else, but he essentially used it as a way to introduce dismantling and rebuilding this program from the ground. That is where a ton of parents got involved. So we came to that board meeting, we heard what was being said, very concerned about the level of misunderstanding that he had, being brand new to the school district and not necessarily doing the homework and asking other parents, other teachers that teach high cap and administer this program, didn't reach out to the former high cap director who's no longer with the district. So there was a lot of misinformation provided in that presentation. So we banded together. We created the high cap parent group. So it's also called the high cap PAC, not to be confused with a political action committee. And that group commenced on Facebook so that we could discuss a way to really come together and help shape what essentially is our students program.
So from the union perspective, we were told that high cap was not being self-contained anymore because they didn't have the money to pay for the overload for high cap. and that's why they needed to not have self-contained high cap programs anymore, because they couldn't afford to pay the overload associated with it, because they had told us that their high cap dollars had already been completely spent and overspent.
One other thing I do want to point out, because this has recently been uncovered, and I think people need to understand the timeline that we're looking at in regards to the risk pool situation. So again, we're part of a risk pool in Washington State. It's comprised of 80 districts in our state, and they all essentially pool together to handle risk for every school district, AKA insurance. And on October 30th of 2023, Marysville School District and the risk pool agreed to cost share on a claim settlement. That was coming up in the next month. More to come.
So on November 6th, the district requests an emergency apportionment advance, and they were declined because the OSPI said that they did not have faith that the districts really needed it. They didn't understand why, and they didn't have any way of paying them back. So that was denied. November 13th, Executive Director Alvin Cooper requests to meet for lab staffing with MEA and other labor groups to discuss that we now had to move lab teachers to different schools because they allocated the lab funding inappropriately, which was not true. I don't know, honestly, I don't know what they were doing with that, but we had a couple of meetings and ultimately they never moved any lab teachers. On November 10th, a SPED community complaint was filed with OSPI by the Pilchuck Uniserve Council, my job, because we were getting multiple complaints on a daily basis that students were going without services, that programs were going without paraeducators, without one-on-ones, that people are not getting lunches, that students are not being served. And this is not just in one place, but it is all over the school district. So we submitted that on November 10th. On November 14th, we meet with, the district meets with staff to discuss the budget deficit status. Where do you want me to go? Okay. Also on 11/17, OSPI notified MSD of the community complaints.
All right, and then we'll bounce back to 11/16. So Marysville School District had outside counsel who was handling this cost sharing for the claim settlement with the risk pool. They reached out to the risk pool and requested to meet to renegotiate the previously agreed upon cost sharing. About 3 weeks before or between the initial agreement and the state. And I believe the actual settlement negotiation was supposed to happen within days of 11/16. I will also share then on 11/25, we started a community petition to essentially not ask for the superintendent to be fired. It was very clear that that petition was to prevent the extension of his contract any further. Our position was he needs to earn his spot, show us that he can competently do the role, and then reassess from there. So that petition was started on 11/25. Next slide.
November 28th, MSD holds community budget meeting at Marysville Pilchuck High School. In this meeting, they didn't take any questions from the community. They reported false numbers on their budget. They reported a cash flow projection model that was completely inaccurate. They also reported the wrong ending or / beginning fund balance for the 23-24 school year, and then presented a laundry list of cuts that they claimed OSPI told them to implement in order to get out of binding conditions, which is completely untrue. The district responds to OSPI regarding the SPED complaint that Pilchuck Uniserve Council gave. Those documents are on the Community Coalition Facebook page, where Claudette Rushing proceeds to gaslight and blame MEA that we are just trying to continue on with this campaign to take down the superintendent and to take down the district, and that our report is not credible, and that if we had complaints, then they needed to be more specific. However, I had extensive meetings with OSPI, with their special education department, asking how community complaints should be submitted and what the process is, and I followed that process with fidelity. Then on December 5th, the unions and the district started our finance budget meetings, where we were coming to meet to try to agree on the numbers, because OSPI had reached out to say nothing's going to change until you all agree on what the numbers are. And we said, okay, well, it's going to take a lot of work, because we have yet to receive any of our information requests, and they don't seem to want to tell us what the actual numbers are, given the community meeting on November 28th. On December 15th, MSD communication to staff only about the $5.9 million deficit reduction. They claim that they reduced $5.9 million out of their budget in payroll. And we said, well, I don't know how you would do that unless you have less staff. So how did you come to this? And they said, well, it really doesn't matter. It was payroll. So anyways, a couple of meetings go by, and then the real reason comes out of why they saved $5.9 million in payroll is because in the 2023 legislative session, the rates for pensions that the district has to pay, like a percentage to the pension program, they were using the rates from the 22-23 school year and not the projected rates for the 23-24 school year. And so they miscalculated and over projected how much they were supposed to spend on the pensions for staff. So that was their savings. I'm gonna skip to then, so we knew about that on December 15th, and then the district didn't communicate it out to the public until January 5th.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
All right. So on January 5th, the highly capable student services task force participants were selected. So part of that initial presentation for HiCap, the board members had asked him to create a task force, and that was finally done. And participants were finally selected and notified January 5th. So again, October 2nd, January 5th. We asked, so the HiCap PAC actually asked to have 2 seats on that task force. We were provided with 1. And we do have some folks here tonight from the HiCap task force that can speak if there's additional questions, but I'll continue moving forward. So Marysville Community Coalition formed like right before the beginning of January, and we very quickly got the ball rolling and held our very first forum to talk very specifically about the budget and the misconceptions around this deficit. All right, and then Marysville Community Coalition, we sent follow-up to Zach Robbins with some of the questions, some of the concerns that came out of that January 6th forum that we held. We did not receive a response on any of the questions from our community. We did not even receive an acknowledgement of the questions that we had sent him via email. And then I'll fast forward and kind of get through my part. So Marysville Community Coalition then presents the school board with the final count from our petition, which was again around 1,100 signatures from our community. This was done just days before the vote to extend. So on 2/5, the school board did vote and approved extending the contract through 2027. So we have 3 years. Also, on 2/7, Marysville School District and Board President Reinhardt received a request from the Washington State Risk Pool to basically appear before the board. They had major concerns with why there was a sudden change in the cost sharing agreement. So they wanted an explanation for that. I'm pointing out here that the former board president, Reinhardt, was copied on that letter February 7th. And we had not heard anything about this.
On February 22nd, MEA finds out that Dr. Robbins does not hold a Washington State Superintendent certificate that is required under his job description that was adopted by the school board in 2005 and was never amended. So he was hired without the qualifications that were required for his job description. He holds an administrative principal certificate that he received on November 16th of 2023. Here you go.
All right, on 2/27, Marysville School District, their outside counsel, outside or inside, I can't remember. Outside counsel and the director of inside counsel, excuse me, folks. All right, and then Lisa Gonzalez appeared before the risk pool board on 2/27 to provide their explanation about the cost sharing agreement. On 3/6, we hold our second forum. It was to kind of talk about individualized learning plans, so IEPs. We had, a few folks attend online, but it was pretty sparse in terms of attendance. On 3/8, the risk pool then sends notice back to Marysville School District about the unresolved concerns that they had, and basically letting them know that cancellation is coming, and requested that they come to that vote as one last chance to say whatever you want to say before they take a vote to essentially cancel our insurance. On 3/14, general counsel basically, I think you already covered that, didn't you? No, she's gonna say.
So when we found out that the superintendent didn't hold the credentials necessary under board policy, Becky and I emailed Claudette Rushing around the different policies that were being violated, which happened to be like Open Public Meetings Acts, not appropriately doing public comment in special meetings, executive sessions, and also that he doesn't hold the right credentials. So she sends an email back that says, I forwarded these to President Reinhardt, and he's going to ensure that we are in alignment with all of our board policies. And don't worry, we changed the superintendent's job description to exclude having a Washington State superintendent's credential. Sorry.
That got a reaction. All right, folks, bringing you 319. This is where the vote takes place to unanimously remove us from the risk pool effective August 31st of this year. And then just a deadline from OSPI, that was when the school district was required to submit their comprehensive financial plan to the state for review.
So in addition to the school district reporting the $5.9 million savings that they saved back in January, that's when they reported that they had just closed the books And they realized that they had a $9.8 million beginning fund balance and not a $1.4 million fund balance. But as you can see from the timeline, that was already known in October, and it was adopted at a school board meeting on November 20th.
Okay, so on April 20th, the HICAP PAC representative basically requested to have a meeting with school board members. They sent a follow-up 4 days later. And then they finally get a response from Brandon Moller's assistant on 5/2 that they wanted to go ahead and present this policy that they'd been working on the next day. So May 2nd, meeting May 3rd. I will also mention that HICAP PAC representative, again, is a parent who is concerned. She represents the parents, not the school district. And if it were not for her, no one would have known about this meeting because no district communication was sent out to anybody. There was no event date on the website, nothing. On 5/3, we sit through this presentation. No board members came. This was where a lot of parents expressed some ongoing concerns about some of the items that were included or were excluded from the policy. And unfortunately, that was on a Friday. And those parents received the actual information, the policy, 2 hours before the meeting started. So we're talking about, Karen, you're back there. How many pages are we talking about?
106.
106? 106 pages to go through for 2 hours before the meeting. Okay. And Jimmy here is saying that he gets all the same notifications that the board does and did not receive a communication either. So let's fast forward. That was Friday. Now we're fast forwarding over the weekend. Monday, we have a board meeting and he presents the HICAP policy to the board. And unfortunately, the vote passed. So parents got up. They again restated their concerns about what was included and what was not included in the 106 pages. And we also, again, made it very clear that we had been requesting since April 20th to meet with board members and bring them into the fold and have ongoing discussions, not only with the board members, with the task force members, and with Brandon Mueller to try and come to an agreement on what was in the policy. And that did not happen. So that's where we are with HICAP at this point. I do want to point out here, the city did do a property exchange. They voted on that May 13th. So that essentially is a way that the city is doing their very best, I think, at this point to help the school district put a little money in our capital fund, really move us out of a dilapidated service center, I guess is what you call it, main office. But we'll see how it turns out.
So on May 15th, the district had to submit a revised financial plan to OSPI because the numbers that the district put in the original plan didn't match up with the numbers they put in for expenditures and revenue. And so they had to resubmit it, and they had to also prove, well, no, that was later. So they resubmit the plan to OSPI. On that same day, that's when the district has to notify certificated staff, if certificated staff who are provisional, which means they're within their first 3 years of their teaching career, or they're in their first year in a different district than where they previously worked. So when you are provisional, you either assume that you have a job for the next year unless you get a letter from the school district stating otherwise. Becky, myself, did not know who was being non-renewed when the date to do it is May 15th. You have to give someone the letter in their hand, or it has to be hand delivered to you by the mailman, like on May 15th, or it has to be postmarked, that you had to have sent the letter on May 15th from the post office saying, okay, you're being non-renewed. That's state law. Then what else? We didn't know staffing for months. We didn't know staffing. Becky sent multiple emails to Alvin Cooper, to Zach Robbins, to basically everybody saying, I don't know where my people are going. My people don't know where they're going. We don't know who's resigned. We don't know who's retired. We don't know who's not renewed. And you are cutting FTE at schools for multilingual learner positions, for lab positions, for critical positions that support students with needs. And they are not communicating anything. In fact, I know that the staffing list that Becky got is the same staffing list that they provided OSPI, which was not a staffing list.
All right, 516, that is when the Marysville Community Coalition revealed to the public that there was this debacle with losing their insurance. So that is when we reported it out. That was not done so by the district prior to that. 4 days later, we finally get a presentation and we're told that yes, in fact, we are losing our insurance and this is for business purposes.
You can thank me for asking that question.
Yes, thanks, Jimmy, for asking that question at the board meeting. We appreciate it. Now, I do also want to point out that one of the reasons they stated we were losing our insurance coverage was not necessarily and only because of the renegotiation of the cost sharing for that claim settlement that we then said we could not pay. So the risk pool had to pay it all. But it was also due to a 900% above average employment claims increase. She's going to talk more on this.
Yeah, it was 300% over the last 2 years, and then between last year and this year, it went up to 900%. And I just want to give some insight into when school districts use risk pool. Risk pool is usually only used for circumstances that are very severe, to where the district wants to maintain that they are not having a biased opinion on the investigation that's taking place. These are like very egregious issues that the risk pool takes on. Usually you have a competent human resources individual who can do those investigations and write them and understand the union collective bargaining agreements to make sure that they're in alignment with those as well. And, the district also hired legal counsel who should also be able to do those investigations. But as you can see, over the last 2 years, they were sending anything and everything to risk pool.
All right. So 520, during a school board public comment, a community member revealed that during one of the committee meetings that she is on, I think it's the budget committee. She, during her public comment, did notify us that MSD was planning to close schools. So that was the first time again that a community member was revealing information that was not being proactively communicated by the district. And then she's going to talk a little more.
Okay. Which ones? These ones? 531? Or this? Okay. So on May 24th, the district communicates that OSPI approved their revised comprehensive plan that was submitted on May 15th. However, they failed to mention in that communication that they were approved, but they also were provided additional requirements in their binding conditions that made them have to do much more like approving of their plan, because they were like, okay, well, you told us these numbers, but now you need to back them up. You need to show us what staff are in what building and how many students they're serving to, you know, what, just a normal HR stuff. So that was something that was left out of the communication. And when I spoke to some individuals regarding those new binding conditions, they were unaware that they were still in binding conditions. They thought that they were out at that point.
All right, everybody knows Lisa Gonzalez submitted stuff outside of the one of the board meetings, so that happened on June 3rd. Again, those included the allegations that later comes out, so I just want to let people know that she hand-delivered that information to somebody outside of the boardroom during the meeting, making that clear. All right. Okay, so on June 4th, I actually go ahead and submit a FOIA, so a public record request, to OSPI to get the documentation about Lisa Gonzalez's allegations against the district. And then I went ahead and read through, I spent 3 hours reading through everything to try and really understand what was going on. And the next day I went ahead and submitted that information on our Facebook page in its entirety and just let everybody know what was going on. 610, bringing high cap back into the fold. So we weren't done. After that vote for high cap, we still had questions. We still wanted board involvement. There are still things that are not set in stone that we feel there's some negotiation there that can be done. So we again, that representative met with Brandon Moeller, and we did also send out communication to the school board letting them know that we still wanted to meet. And I do not believe, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, still have not received any type of confirmation that a meeting is going to be set up or anything at all. Nada. Nothing. Thank you. All right. And then on 6/11, the district does release a statement regarding the Gonzalez allegations. And 2 days later, Alvin Cooper, Executive Director of Human Resources, resigns. Let me state that over for the camera. Executive Director of Human Resources, Alvin Cooper, then resigns immediately. Again, kind of amidst that time frame of the Gonzalez allegations. And then I will just say that, you know, on the 17th of June is when our community essentially began doing a recall grievance. That was filed against Board President Reinhardt and VP Krebs, and that did result in Reinhardt resigning that day at a board, well, before the board meeting. All right, on 6/17 at that board meeting, we also received a presentation from the new insurance broker that's been hired by Marysville School District. They provided us with an update, not much of one to be realistically honest. And then, let's see here, we did place, I'm just gonna kind of go through mine and I'll hand it over. We did place a pause on the recall effort against our VP, Connor Krebs. We do hope that we are able to, you know, really engage and make a change for the positive. So that is a pause for now. And then again, just kind of reminding everybody, we don't have insurance after August 31st. Everybody can assume if they want, but that is fact for now, is we do not have insurance at this time after August 31st.
I'm going to go over a little bit about the OSPI's notification to convene a financial oversight committee. So this is the first time in Washington state history that a financial oversight committee has been placed on a school district from OSPI due to binding conditions. I want to make it very clear that most school districts who are also in binding conditions have exited binding conditions within their first year of being in binding conditions. Unfortunately, that is not the case for Marysville due to what we have been sharing on this presentation. However, what is very scary in this moment is that the district can continue to spend money and make the same mistakes that they've made over and over again until that committee is put in place. So that means that the next year's budget is still due on July 10th. We don't have anyone different making that budget. We don't have anyone different hiring staff to replace the ones that left. So we are in a very precarious situation for the OSPI saying, we're going to do a financial oversight committee. It's going to take us a little bit of time to get it together. Meanwhile, the community, the staff, the students, and everyone are screaming like, this is not okay. We have to change something. And we have executive directors quitting. We have the superintendent in charge of technology. And that's very concerning. There have been allegations against Dr. Robbins from Lisa Gonzalez, and normally when there are allegations as serious as the ones that were stated within those documents, the school board puts superintendents on paid administrative leave. They put them on paid administrative leave because this is normal process when you do an investigation. You want to protect the people who have alleged the allegations. You also do want to protect the individual who the allegations are against. And it is for the purpose of not meddling with an investigation, to ensure that the investigation is done with fidelity and that there is no chance that the individual who is being investigated is able to tamper with any sort of potential evidence to where they can't fire someone who wouldn't be able to give testimony to said investigation. And it overall is something that is very standard in when situations like this happen to a superintendent. I work in multiple school districts in Snohomish County, and in situations where allegations come up against the superintendent, they are put on leave. So
that's the end of our presentation. We're going to go ahead and move to open for questions, comments, dialogue. Again, ground rules, please be respectful. Give me an opportunity to restate the question for the folks online as well who are not here attending in person. Yes, ma'am.
When the final budget for 2023-24 was submitted, what number did the district put down as FTEs? Projected FTEs. Like that might have been.
for certificated staff, it was 700. Oh, for students? For students?
Yes.
Okay. So the question was, what was the reported enrollment numbers on the 23-24 budget at the beginning of the school year? That was 9,815 students.
Okay, now did that correspond, back in my day, the first 5 days, every school has to call in the number. And is that number
So then
based on actual bodies, or is it based?
So from what we showed in the timeline, we saw in February of 2023 that the district projected the enrollment numbers to be like 9,344. Okay. So then for the budget, they projected 9,815. When their count came in, they came out at 9,300 and something students, and then claimed that we had a severe decline in our student enrollment, and we were going to be losing apportionment dollars from the state because of that.
It seems to me that SPI should be very concerned, not only ICAP, but special ed. I mean, they get funding depending on, you know, the condition of the child. And there, you know what, I guess I'm having a little problem understanding that SBI isn't coming in quicker and faster.
We do hear a lot of commentary that school districts are local governmental entities and that they do have jurisdiction as a local government. So the amount of oversight that the state can provide is limited in some sense due to law. But I don't think that anyone here disagrees with you in that statement.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Speak loudly, please.
I'm not sure if anybody has an answer, it's just a question that came up when we were talking about the timeline, but, how is it possible that the job description for somebody already in place, the superintendent, who or how can that be changed? Who has the authority to change it and how did that get changed? I don't know if anybody has that.
I can explain, oh, sorry. The question was, who's responsible for changing minimum requirements on job descriptions, and how does that happen? There is a board policy stating job descriptions, and there's procedure on how to change job descriptions, and it has to go through board approval to change any job description. They have to be approved by the school board. I never was witness to the school board meeting where the job description was changed. But I was notified via email that it was changed.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So has an attorney of any kind looked at that to make sure that that was done legally without? You can't.
The person who said it was changed is an attorney. There you go. So the question was, has an attorney looked at the change in the job description to see if it was legal?
As a board member?
No, ma'am. We have a in-house general counsel who was hired this year. Her name is Claudette Rushing. And she is the one who actually corresponded that the change had happened. You want to add to that?
After he was hired and didn't meet the requirement.
That is correct, yes. Debbie's saying that they changed the requirements for his job after he was hired, which is true. He was hired in 2022, and they just changed it after we submitted a concern to the board.
Yes, ma'am.
Is Claudette still in-house counsel?
Yes, ma'am. Claudette Rushing is still in-house counsel.
Can I just have you reiterate for clarity, because I know you know this, I know Becky, you know this. If I, as a teacher, if I even went one day out of certification, I would be placed on leave, correct?
Yes, you would be.
I'm not allowed to be in the classroom teaching until I got that finished.
So the question was, if my certificate lapses, I, as a certificated staff member, a teacher, I would not be able to be teaching in my classroom. I would have to go out on leave. I don't know about the leave part. However, you are warned multiple times from your district that if you do not get your certificate renewed in time, that you can no longer be employed with the school district.
Just one moment. Yes, ma'am.
Can I see it?
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Annie Fitzgerald.
Annie, would you like to use the mic?
Yes, please.
This sounds like a longer conversation.
Just don't have that point towards the speaker.
Okay. Hi, my name is Annie Fitzgerald. I am running for state representative in this district, District 38, Position 1. I do not see either of the other people here that I'm running against tonight. So let's make note of that. First of all, I have been following this for a while. I have attended multiple school board meetings at this point, and I am absolutely floored. I'm absolutely furious by what I'm hearing. This district is in trouble, and our students, our parents
our teachers are the ones that are going to be suffering. I promise was a part of my campaign, and if elected, I will be following this. I used to work as a private investigator for many, many years, so I will be investigating this. And I will make sure that whoever is responsible is held accountable, and that these issues raised here tonight are addressed. I'm extremely concerned that the people involved are not being held accountable, and that's not fair. That's not fair to anyone. It's not fair to the community. It's not fair to the teachers. It's also not fair to the students. I'm especially concerned about particular programs like special ed. I grew up in special ed. I was a special ed kid in Snohomish School District. So I'm very familiar with how important that program is. And without that, without the teachers that were with me every step of the way, from elementary school through high school, I don't think I would have been able to be where I'm at today. So I also think it's very important that we keep music and art programs in our schools. I'm extremely concerned about programs being cut, staff being cut, and our kids. So I just wanted to let you all know that I'm here, that I hear you, I'm paying attention, I'm listening, and I will make sure that these things are dealt with. If it's okay, I would like to give you guys my flyers. It has my contact information on the bottom. And I would like to receive the information. If you guys could email me the information some of the information you presented tonight, so I can review it and investigate it, I would really appreciate that. I will follow through on this, and I will be speaking up at the next school board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Oh, hold on just a moment.
Hi,
Tanya.
Tanya. So for the positions, the two director positions that are posted, I'm gonna presume the answer is no. Has the district reached out to community members to be on an interview? So we can vet them as well? So we don't have this.
So to my knowledge, yes. However, when have we ever seen, okay, the question was, for the two executive director positions posted on the district website, is there going to be a committee to help with the hiring process? And my answer is yes. However, I have never seen a committee that's been formed under this superintendent where he has actually taken what the committee has said and actually done it.
Can we volunteer ourselves as tribute for that? Like, the student names, like, these people are interested.
So the question was, can we just volunteer as tribute? And to my knowledge, no. He reached out to the budget committee, the community budget committee that just met tonight at 5 o'clock, that Lisa Gonzalez was in charge of previously.
Who's in charge of it now?
Courtney Hill is in charge of that committee now.
There are 3 executive positions open.
Oh, okay, so there's 3 positions open right now. Yeah, but he's only hiring externally for HR and finance.
Excuse me. So speaking to that, I have a question. So I am the mother of 5 special needs students in this district. I have had lots of lovely time working with a lot of our special education supervisors, directors, teachers, and administrators. My question is that our next special education executive director, is there any way that we can ensure that that person is properly accredited? Because as of right now, I am under the impression that the person they are planning to hire is not accredited to do that kind of work in our state.
Okay.
And to continue on that, is there any way for us to figure out what's going on in that direction anyhow? Because if you know anything about Harry Potter, our executive director of special education is like the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. We've had a couple of really good ones, and the really good ones bolt as fast as they can from our district. I've been on the CPAC committee for 2 years, and we can do next to nothing without support. And if we keep losing good executive directors, as far as I'm concerned, Michelle Rickle was great. She tried her hardest. She called me in to testify at the OSP, I think, but she knew I had both good and bad experiences, and I would give a level head. So is there any way moving forward as a community we can get some kind of say in who they hire so we don't have these problems?
Thank you. I'll do my very best to restate that for the audience online.
Somebody could possibly.
Maybe, I don't know.
If you point it towards them, it might help a little bit, I don't know.
Okay. So the general question in that was, do we have any ability to ensure that the next executive director of special education is accredited and most likely, holds the right qualifications, et cetera, for that position to do the job well in this state? That is not a question that I can answer. So we will jot that down because, can you? You can answer that?
The executive director of special education's job description is posted on board docs. It's under all the policies. Every single job description is posted on the district website. And whoever applies should probably meet those qualifications. And that's what the committee should verify, and that Zach and the school board should verify that that individual does have the required qualifications that they have adopted within that job description. And if that job description has changed, there should have been a process and a board meeting to adopt the changes of the job description.
All right, I know you have been waiting for quite a long time. Would you like to come up and speak into the microphone?
No,
Okay.
this is pretty short.
All right.
My question is about classical school closures. And I want to know if OSPI will be involved to make sure that if schools are closed, the process is fair and open.
So the question was, throughout the process of closing schools, is OSPI going to be involved in making sure that it's all done legally and according to what they're supposed to do? So in one of the letters from OSPI, they clearly stated that in your process for closing schools, you have to abide by the proper RCWs, so the proper laws that outline the way in which you do close schools, and that you need to be communicating with your community as this process goes on. So that was a directive from OSPI. They're legally required to do certain things when closing a school. Closing a school does not mean just taking all the kids out and continuing to do other things in the school. That's not closing the school. So I just want to make that clear.
And I will also state that the deadline for that plan to be laid out by MSD is July 10th. Yes, ma'am.
There was a June 1st deadline, there's a June 30th deadline, and there's a July 10th deadline. So I'm getting them mixed up because that's a lot of deadlines. And I don't know which one, but the letter is on the Community Coalition Facebook page. It's in one of the PDFs, so you guys can go in and reread that to verify what the deadlines are. It's very soon.
And still no meetings. Okay. Hold on a minute. There's some people over here. Yes, Becky?
I need to go back to this.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things. So first of all, the superintendent requirement, I want everybody to understand that you do not have to have a superintendent credential to be a superintendent in Washington State. However, it was in our job description, right? So that was the difference. So it was in our job description. You didn't really answer her question about how can we make them have a committee. We can't make them have a committee. At the last board meeting, that's exactly what I spoke about. And I was somewhat shocked to see that he reached out to anyone. He made it clear that it was the first part of the process. I don't know what that looks like. And he was reaching out to the budget committee to see if any of us would be interested in doing it. Probably all of us responded yes. But that was only for finance and HR. He didn't say anything about special ed. So we can't make that happen. I had a conversation with him last spring when we had the mass exodus of executive directors. And I asked him, well, when are the committees going to start? And he said, we're not doing committees. He said, I've done committees in the past. And then kind of the committee sways me to go with a person. And I'm paraphrasing. And then it doesn't turn out. So I'm hiring everyone myself. That's what he told me last spring. And that's how all the people we have now got hired.
Thank you, Becky. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Question as to what she just said.
Okay.
So what you're saying is any hiring decisions he's made without the input of HR?
Yeah.
Yes.
Rephrase it, please.
Thank you. So any of the positions that he has hired has been done so without the input from HR? The answer is yes.
He utilized a recruiting agency that he's worked with for 20-something years. They're friends. And that recruiter recruited all of the individuals who were hired this year, and which are all, yes. So that's how that happens.
Was that an additional cost then?
So the question was that an additional cost? And I would say, yes, that was additional cost. Who's next?
I want to point out something to add to that.
Do you want to come speak?
You want me to go on mine?
Better than me rephrasing it.
Only because I have admin credentials and I'm applying for an admin job. I was applying for an assistant principal position, actually principal and assistant. And when I went online to look in the typical place where you would look to find these jobs, AWSP, which is the organization that runs all the principals, assistant principals, any of the administrators, it's their organization. They didn't post these jobs in there at all originally. They posted them on job sites like ZipRecruiter and Ziply, those kind of job sites, basically with the intent of finding out-of-state candidates. They didn't put it in the job pool where anybody that was a Washington cert would be looking for a job. It wasn't until I brought it up, I believe, to Becky, that it actually got corrected on the next job posting. So, I mean, it was pretty clear they were looking for certified people not in Washington when they were posting these jobs.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go to this side of the room here real quick, Christine.
I just wanted to mention that Alvin Cooper, although he was hired through PR recruiting, knew Zach long before. So it seems a bit fishy that he had to go through PR recruiting when Zach was on the person call and offered him the job. So for the practice.
Yeah, so the comment was that it's a little bit fishy that he is basically getting candidates hired through GR recruiting that he has had personal ties to for quite some time prior to that.
And that's multiple.
And that is multiple candidates. And that information is actually on my personal Facebook page prior to me creating the Marysville Community Coalition page. So I will post some additional information about that in the coming week. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about our insurance. At the board meeting, I was at the last board meeting, and the presentation, the broker said there was a no scenario in which we will not have insurance for the newest school year. Do you think that that is true, or they have not been, that company has not been shown you the whole entire picture, and that is why that role in the statement?
So the question was, it was stated at the last school board meeting that there was no way that we would not start the school year with insurance, that we were going to have insurance, no matter what. Then the question was stated, do they know about, all the things that transpired with the last risk pool? And I'm going to just answer the question to my knowledge is that, yes, maybe an insurance organization will pick us up. But what is that cost? We may not be able to afford the premiums on this different policy because of the things that have transpired.
Yeah, I asked this question of Dr. Robbins when it was first announced by the school district that we would be losing our insurance. And I asked, well, what will the cost of the new policy be? And he just said, it will be more. So it will definitely be more, and that's the problem.
And within some of the letters from OSPI, it states that the district needed to account within their budget for next school year an additional $600,000 in costs. But we know that that was a minimum additional cost, that it could cost much, much more.
I'm going to add to that. So one of my concerns, obviously, we are concerned about A, having insurance, B, what it's going to cost. But I also want to talk about something that can't be quantified by dollars, which is what potentially can change with how we administer a lot of our services to students as a result of having new insurance requirements from a new company that may or may not like the way that we are potentially running certain programs, especially programs that take some of our special education students off campus. We have partnerships with local organizations to provide them with job skills. So I am say it again. ECAP. So I am very concerned about that aspect, which again, it's not coming up on the top priority list to talk about, but that is a big concern because those students are very vulnerable and they need to be serviced the way that they're used to being serviced. And we've spent a lot of time, those departments, those staff have spent a lot of time forging good relationships with the community partners to help these students, and that's a big concern of mine. Yes, ma'am.
How much is the mayor involved in all this? Is anybody here from the mayor's office?
The question was, how much is the mayor's office involved in it? And if anybody here is from the mayor's office. I don't see any of them here. Okay, so I will speak to that. I have a little bit of knowledge because I did attend a coffee with the mayor or something along those lines one evening with my good friend here, Amy Hill. And we did ask, what's his take on things? He's pretty clear in terms of, the fact that he can't step in and take control, right? There is definitely some lines that can't be blurred. Cannot be blurred. However, what he did state to us is that he does have meetings with Zach Robbins and other district leaders pretty frequently. I think he said monthly, if I'm not confused, but monthly, and that he has done as much as he can to advise them on how to communicate and partner with the community. And he kind of referred to it as the elephant in the room.
But it's
So-
going to, if he's increased to where you got more tax dollars, you're going to take and lose those when people start moving out of Marysville because they aren't gonna put up with. I wouldn't put my kids in this district. In fact, I actually put my kids out of this district.
Yes, so the statement was, how is this essentially going to affect our tax base, people moving out of the community because of the concerns that are coming from the school district? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. Courtney wants to speak to that.
I think that it's about holding the individuals who are making these issues big and making sure that you stand up as a community member and tell your school board, I'm not standing for this. Our community doesn't need this, because it's not that the community is against the school district. Everyone bands together to support students in the community and the schools. And you guys just passed a great levy campaign, and it's not about like the money that you don't have. It's how the money is being spent. It's not about binding conditions right now. It's not about the levy failure. It's about the individuals at the top who are either not doing their job or purposefully doing their job with negligence for their own benefit. And that is the issue here. OSPI keeps talking about other binding conditions, you lost your levy. It's that, but it's not that necessarily from Marysville. We have some very bad leadership, and it has to change before things are going to change. So everyone has to speak up at every school board meeting. You need to talk to your legislators. You need to talk to your school board members individually. You need to tell them that this cannot continue. Because you want to know what's going to happen if it does? There won't be a levy that passes next time. And then we're really going to be in a bad situation because the money literally won't be there. The money's there now. It's just being mismanaged.
Oh, Colton. First off, hold on a
Colton's like-
second. Colton is our amazing tech guy, tech guru. Colton, what would you like to ask?
So I'm forwarding a question from online from live stream. So someone was wondering about what is next and what can the public do to help?
What is next and what can the public do to help? I love that question. Thank you. So Courtney did touch on that a bit, right? We're all here. So I am definitely, angle the mic, he says, like this.
Yeah.
Ooh, easy. See, we got another one. You guys still hear me okay?
I don't want to, let's see if my ears is like this.
So not like a music singer?
This.
Okay.
You can do it that way, just on the other side.
I know, I'm not well versed in this. Okay, so I would say, we all need to show up. We all need to keep having conversations. You guys have heard me say that, right? Keep talking. So the way that we can realistically change things for the better is share the information with people who don't know. Make sure that they're aware that there is a group out there that is working very, very hard. I do want to point out these are people who have full-time jobs and don't get paid to do this work. And we are here because we care about this community and we care about the students, we care about the school district and our teachers. We need to show up, we need to talk, we need to write OSPI when we have concerns. And I know that can be daunting. That's one more thing in your day to do. But have your short list of email addresses that you need to send your concerns to, and do it frequently. Unfortunately, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and we need to be a squeaky wheel right now, and we need to keep continuing to talk to our fellow community members, and we need to realistically just come up with what do we want and make sure that we are moving with positivity towards that. We need to align school board members that are willing to work with us. That's huge because we as a community can't get up there and vote yes or no. The only thing we can do is vote yes or no to the board members who are sitting behind that desk. It's important that we do that carefully and And we do that and have those relationships with board members who are going to put our community's voice first and hear us. Did I forget anything? Did I forget anything? Okay. And all of you can answer that question too. If you have ideas, bring them. This isn't us sitting up here. This isn't Marysville Community Coalition founding members sitting up here telling the direction that this community needs to go in. This is a conversation. We are simply the apparatus to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Do they post how things are voted on by which board member so that we can educate ourselves for that vote in the future?
The question is, do votes essentially get documented
Yeah, like
as to
yes
who
or no?
is saying yes or no to certain things? They should. Those should be actually documented in the meeting minutes. And it'll be, it's not always the next board meeting that those are voted, the meeting minutes are voted in. I do believe there's one that's missing that wasn't voted on. So yes, you can look back at the documentation that's on the Marysville School District website to find out what and who was voted on, who voted for what. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, following up with the board member conversation, so position 4 is going to be open. What's the timeline for that? If you know, what's the process? And it's my understanding that the current board then appoints, they get a pool of candidates that live in the area. The board appoints that person, so I would suggest that, first of all, if you know people in District 4 that are on board with kids, to, approach them and, advocate that they run. And then if you've got someone that's good, tell your board people that are currently on the school board, because it's their choice. Current board members then get to appoint that position since it's an open spot. They're not elected into it. They will fill in temporarily, okay? So let your current board know, this is who I want. And if the current board is not listening to you, their spots will be open soon too, okay? So it starts with us here. Because we need a new person on that board. We need some change on that board. So timeline, you know when and what the process is. If anybody is in here that was in the board, what they need to do.
Okay, just one moment. So I'm going to restate, and then I'm actually going to have somebody else answer the question. So the question realistically is about the timeline and the process to appoint a new board member to District 4. That is the open spot since Wade Reinhardt resigned. I'm going to have our VP Connor Krebs actually speak to that right now.
First, I want to say thank you for the good questions. I think my intention tonight is really just to listen and be able to take notes back to board members' district. I think that'll lend to kind of some more urgency to the questions that are being asked if I take it. So the question was timeline as far as filling the seat. We have a legal requirement to fill it within 90 days, or else OSPI will step in and fill that seat for us. That timeline started from the last board meeting, which was on the 17th. I believe either today or tomorrow, something will be sent out from the district as far as steps to take to apply to that position. I think a map of District 4 so that you can see if you're in that area. We're going to, we've done this twice in the past 2 years with a current board member and a previous board member, and how that timeline played out was, I think we opened up the application pool for 2 weeks to allow community members to apply. After then, we opened up interviews to the public. Each applicant had the same questions. And then I believe after that, a survey was sent out, or we gave some time for the community to email the district with your recommendations or concerns. And then after some time was given for community feedback, we appointed the board member who was best suited for the spot. Yes.
So a follow-up, is the public open or is the public invited to that interview process for potential candidates?
They are, I think.
And there will be notification out from the district that we're holding it on just a reasonable amount of time.
There will be. Oh, sorry. So the question was, will the public be involved in the interview process, and will the public know well in advance of when that interview is going to take place? I think by tomorrow, when the information comes out, that's going to line out the specific days that the interviews are scheduled to take place, and that'll be probably a month or so away from the 17th. So you'll have that date, I would say, as soon as early this week, tomorrow. Yes.
So we have another question online. So someone wants to know, what are the time periods for the position?
I mean, it really depends on what situations we're going through as a district. I think, I would say last summer, the board attended one meeting a month. This summer, I think with everything that's going on, the board is involved 2 to 3 days a week. And when I say involved, I don't just mean meetings. I mean involved with, not regular session meetings, but meetings with the public, like tonight. It's a very involved position when there's a lot of things going on in the district. So really, right now, I would say it's a heavily involved position.
Does the superintendent have any input in that position?
Does the superintendent have any input in the selection of the board member? He does not.
I have a question.
Yes.
The questions that are asked during the interview of the candidates, are those questions that the school district or the board makes, or is that involving the community asking questions at that same time?
So during the interview, since every interviewee has, I think legally, I'm not sure on that, but I think every interviewee has to be asked the same exact question. So we can't ask different questions from other folks. So in that setting, it's just going to be the board asking questions. With that said, that doesn't mean that community starting now can't send in recommended questions for these interviewees. I would suggest that. It would help us kind of get our questions together, and then afterwards, there's room for a community to ask for clarifying information.
I think that WASTA provides also common questions for school board members.
We've used those for the past 2.
And then this favorite position would be through till, what, July?
November of 25.
25.
Yes, so the question was, how long will this interim position be? How long will it be an interim position? It'll be until November 25. That's when Board President Meinhardt was slotted to be elected until. But that doesn't mean that whoever's an interim can't run, obviously, in November.
Yes, ma'am.
This, you may not want to answer, and I know it's a tough question, the board member standing.
I think this one's for me, girl.
Yeah.
I've been around more than once, but, is your correspondence when you connect with the board, can they deal with the board direct, or do you have to go through the superintendent first? If you want to meet with the board, and the second part, which you probably will not be able to answer, I understand, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you feel the board is receptive to major changes? And if you want to say no answer, and I'm basing that on.
Yep, you want to restate that one.
All right, I'm gonna
I'm
restate.
basing that on.
You're gonna help me restate this, because I might have forgotten half of it already. Okay, so the first question was, am I able to correspond? I just remembered what Jimmy
With the
said.
board
Okay.
member.
Yep, am I able to correspond directly with the board member, or does my communication have to go through the superintendent? It does not have to go through the superintendent. And in fact, what I'll give you one more is that the superintendent has never responded to anything that I have said.
Well,
Are you guys shocked? I'm not, but I'm just saying.
I mean, when he responded to me,
You hold it professionally.
when he responded to me, he gave me those like 3 sentences that, so I would not recommend, even if you do get a response, which you probably won't, I don't recommend it.
We'll get to your second.
I will say that between Becky and myself emailing the superintendent, we never get more than 2 sentences. Am I allowed to share my opinion on receptiveness? So this is speaking just from my own experience, and I apologize, Connor, but I do not feel that the school board is receptive right now to change because I don't feel like they understand what their roles and duties are. Because I cannot believe that the school board did not act sooner when all of this stuff was happening. It is the superintendent's duty to ensure that the financial state of the district is intact, and it is currently not. We are now the first district in history to be in binding conditions and have an oversight committee.
I mean, you don't have to have any experience in school budgets, nothing.
Right, and the comment was you don't have to have any type of formal experience running a school district to become a board member. And yes, that is correct. So again, that points back to the importance of us all voting and putting up candidates that we believe, even if you don't have the proper experience. I don't think there is a perfect candidate out there, right? But we need to have people who have positive intent and we're willing to listen to the community, and I'm going to put this in there, admit when you've made a mistake and don't be afraid to retract action that you are currently on the road of. That's important. I want to speak just a second. I want to speak to what you, this feedback is terrible. Left side. Yes. Maybe it's the little buttons on the thing. All right. The other question that you had is, do I feel like the board is able to make significant change or wants to? I feel like we have 2 new board members, and so they are, I think, trying to figure out what they should be doing right now. They're really realistically getting used to the role, and I don't think that this role is easy right now by any means. But what I will say is, I think if we continue to see engagement by the board members, hopefully, I'm hopeful that that will provide them with the support they need to feel to make some changes. And I think, it comes down to realistically sticking with what the state is asking of us at this point. And I think it comes down to creating and changing current policies that have put us here in the first place. So if we can see those types of actions by the board, then I feel like it's not necessarily them doing significant change, it's us. That's what I'm going to say about that. Gentleman in the back.
15 years spent working in Marysville School District. Just recently left, took a job at Lake Stevens. Got to the point where I was so frustrated with the system that I didn't want to be a part of it. It was emotional to leave my kids. It was tough. Ask the families, the parents, the kids. We're not doing the best that we can. And I think the board isn't taking ownership in what their role is, and their job is, and anybody that voted to extend Zach, in essence, tied themselves to it, because they put us in a deeper hole.
Yes.
And we need to hold every board member accountable for that decision, give them a chance to act on it now because our kids can't wait for those positions to open up years down the road to see the change. Hold them accountable now. Get the change that needs to happen, or ask them to leave, ask them to step in. And know there are people in the community that are willing to serve and that are passionate to see the change that we have. It's been very frustrating to see just the downward slide of the over the past 15 years. I've emailed board members before, even current board members, with zero response. I've emailed Zach with zero response. I did get a response one time from Zach that deflected my concern about some very sensitive cultural issues that were happening in our school, deflected straight to Joe Young. And so I know the frustration that some teachers are going through. I want to kind of voice that, and they're leaving. Talking about the getting administrators and hiring from within. I've had 8 principals in 15 years, and I think one has been from Marysville, and maybe 2, but that's it. It is going outside the system. They don't know our community and our kids. So, I encourage those board members that are part of that, act now or step aside.
Yes. I want to add into that. It's like, if you have a good heart and you care about the community and you care about kids, the organization that supports school board members is called WASDA, Washington State School Board Association, and they train new school board members. They're available every day, business day, for questions. They have model policies that they suggest to different school boards if they're not sure of what policy would be good. There's legal access. There's so many opportunities for school board members to get educated on what their job is. So people shouldn't be scared to step up to be a school board member because maybe they don't know things, because the education and resources are there.
Yes, ma'am.
How do I go about getting the minutes of the meeting that the school board approved the amendment to our superintendent having to be a superintendent? Where do I find that?
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
The question was, if I can just restate it real quickly and then I'll let you continue. The question was, where can we obtain the minutes from the meeting that the superintendent's contract, or sorry, minimum requirements, recommendations were changed?
Right.
And the answer is, it did not happen with a board vote.
Okay, so he just voted on himself not needing one? There's got to be some, I mean.
We can't answer that question because we don't know. Only an email was provided that said that the requirements are no longer there. That's all we know. We know nothing else.
Okay, I worked for the district for 35 years. My children, I graduated from Marysville. My children graduated from Marysville. My grandchildren are now going to school in Marysville, and my son is a teacher in Marysville. I have never seen anything so, I want to call it illegal. There's something that someone needs to be criminally put in jail, fired. Something needs to be done. But we can't be just sitting here and saying, yeah, that wasn't right. That wasn't right. None of this has been right for the last 2 years. Even though I retired 8 years ago, I was the SEIU representative who did all the job interviews. For 7 years while I was working, I was retired for 8. So I did it when I was retired until September. And I have quit because I could not deal with the stuff that Alvin was doing that was so wrong for our community. It made me physically sick on what he would do. And I got along with every principal, everything, that we went into the buildings, they were all amazing. We wanted to hire these really good people, we had lots of people coming in that we hired. But after we hired them, then all of a sudden they leave. Talk about spending money, we do one thing. Last year, I was called in by Alvin. He was at one of our elementary schools because he wanted to put 2 of our parents on administrative leave over a trumped up parent issue that, whatever. So I went in there and the parents hadn't even been told. I'm sitting, it's me, the principal, Alvin. I was shocked to see him. I've never seen him out of the building. So he was at the elementary school. And he said, we're putting these 2 gals on administrative leave. Do they know that? Nope, I haven't called them in to talk to them yet. Okay, but I want you here, so I wrote down all the notes. And it was so ridiculous what it was. It should have been handled that afternoon. So a month later, I go back to this amazing elementary school, and I asked the principal, I said, I hope the girls took it, and these are senior parents. I said, I hope the girls took it okay that they were put on administrative leave. And she looked at me and she said, they're still on administrative leave. And I looked at him. Alvin told me he was having an outside investigation into these 2 ladies. And so for a month, we had children that were not supported because they couldn't get any substitutes to come in. So not only did he screw up everything else, those kids were not represented by an adult. And I was so angry by what had happened. And then, so I called our, right here. I called him finally. I was so hurt that these poor ladies are still sitting home, getting paid. And we don't have any money, but they're getting paid. And somehow he did the investigation, which wasn't his job. Anyway, so he did the investigation, they were back to work the next day. That's how incompetent that man was. I brought it up to people above Alvin, not a thing, not a word, nothing. Just like, I quit reading. So, and it's very sad because we have some amazing teachers here. We have kids that are just, hey, I have 2 great kids here that are amazing. And we can't let this go. We're going to lose all the good people that are here. So I don't know if you have to call the police in. I mean, I don't know where I'm at. FBI, was it federal money that they spent on? I mean, there's got to be something that we can do that's not just like that.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
I've just been curious if you guys have asked or received any information on why the message from the board, and Connor, I'm not going to put you on the spot to answer this unless you want to, but why do we keep getting communication that says we value the superintendent's leadership, and why was there a letter written by the tribes that says that we value the relationship that we have with the superintendent when the educators in Marysville and the community has spoken so loudly about how much damage has happened since he has taken that role?
So the question is, why do we keep receiving communication from the school district and from the tribe, you say, in support of Zach Robbins' valued leadership? Is that right? Thank you. I don't know.
Do you want to?
I'm not going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
I don't think he's giving me the eyes. He doesn't want to answer that.
I mean, it's not that I don't want to answer, it's just I don't have a good answer.
Connor does
I
not
don't
have
have a good
any
answer
answers.
for you. The only, I think the only good answer in that situation is that we still want our district to be desirable for other potential future candidates.
Let him speak, please.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna interrupt anybody else.
We still want our district to be desirable to future executive directors and superintendents. I think if we have a district that's not desirable, it becomes a lot harder to attract highly qualified executive directors and superintendents.
It's so be honest and desirable, and then people know what they're getting into. They can roll up their sleeves now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connor.
Just a quick point to that.
Sure.
I just want an honest answer. Did you guys write that, or was that written by Jody Runyon? With legal and then put your name on it?
The question was the communication written by the school board or Jody Runyon?
I'll tell you, there was many drafts to that communication, in which I think had the original draft been published, this room might be on fire because of it. There was a lot of conversation around that message, and I think that there was the fact that there was only one sentence and it didn't say support, but it said value. I think that was a lot better than what it would have been. So.
Thank you. Christine?
I wanted just to mention a couple of things. I heard a lot of people talking about communication, and I did send some correspondence to the board, which I got a response from the Reinhardt at the time. My frustration is that as a teacher, we have an expectation of, I don't know, I think it's 24 or 48 hours. I always respond within 24 hours, and I tend to respond to communication. However, there are many community members, probably hundreds, as well as staff, that never get responses from the leadership of the district. And I specifically said, is there going to be some policy put into place to address their lack of response to communication? Because if we're held to a certain standard as educators in the district, I think our leadership should be held to that same standard. My second point to that is, we hear about these 2 to 3 sentence responses that he makes in email. That's probably because most of his communication is done on Slack or text messaging on his personal phone, where it cannot be tracked by public records. And my last point is this. Part of getting a superintendent credential is going through classes that teach you about finance, that teach you about administration and leadership. And when you don't have that credential, you don't have the knowledge you need to handle the finances of the district.
Thank you. And we do have an online. We're gonna go to Colton.
Yeah, we've got a few ones I'll go through. So, first one is there a legal requirement for putting those with allegations against them on leave?
Is there a legal requirement for those who have allegations against them to put them on leave? I do not believe so. I'm looking around the room. I don't think anybody. Yes, ma'am.
I emailed OSPI about that exact question, and they said there's nothing that they can do about that, because I addressed the fact that we have asked him to be put on leave, and he's not being put on leave. So they can't do anything about it. The only other thing we can do is OPP, which is another state agency. We can file a formal complaint with them. We have to document through the WACs, the state of Washington laws, the things that he has done that are against all of those laws.
Thank you for that information. So to recap, the answer provided by a member here in the audience is that OSPI was contacted and they essentially said there's nothing that they can do to place him on leave. And then there is a different organization, OPP. Do you know what that stands for?
Office of Professional Practice. Yeah.
Office of Professional Practice that needs us to compile a list based off of laws So RCWs and WACs can formally submit a complaint before they're able to step in.
So OPP violations can be also submitted by superintendents, and they can be as simple as like a letter stating this is the allegation, and OPP is required to do an investigation to see if the allegations are valid or not. And this is for individuals with certificates. So Zach does have a certificate, and so if he is violating the requirements of his job duties by law, then someone could file an OPP complaint.
So I plan to put that together. I actually have someone who needs legal background, so I plan to review all the WACs and see based on the information that's been posted on the Facebook page of the things that he's done, and I'll be sharing that on the page when I submit it as well.
Great, thank you. All right, and sorry guys, I know we have a lot of questions in the room, but I do not want to.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. And then we're gonna go back to a couple online ones.
Hi, I'm Ron Friesen. Try to stay involved, even though I'm an old community member, been here since 1975. I'm a retired teacher. My kids, we've lived here since then. My kids went through Marysville Pilchuck High School. This last year, I had a good opportunity to volunteer in Totem Middle School. You cannot, well, you can. Let me ask, how many people are present right now who are residents of Marysville who are not teachers? Okay, good. Or not employed by the district anywhere. Okay? Okay? Okay. So my message is mostly for you, and I say us. This didn't just happen. This has been going on. It started 20 years ago, and now you're seeing it finally blow up. And I want to say to all of you, thank you for being here and finally paying attention, because the lies and deceits that have happened in this school district have happened and started 20 years ago and have been flying under the radar. And now they're out in the open. Okay? So that's great. But now the question is, what are you going to do now? I was at Totem Middle School this year. The place is an absolute disaster. Why is that? Is that just because of the district? No, it's because the community of Marysville has not supported their schools and have not passed bond issues to rebuild the schools, unlike other districts. We have to take responsibility for that. And you might not like that message, but I'm here to give it to you. Okay, do you understand that? So the question is, we can point all the fingers we want, but then what do we do now? What do we do now? What are we going to do? Sit here and complain, or are we going to get off our rear end and support levies and bonds? Are we going to get out in the schools and see what a mess they are? Are we willing to go out there and clean up the grass on the courtyards that make our schools look pitiful, and tell our students that Marysville doesn't care about them? That's the message that students are getting. That's the message I saw at Totem Middle School. When there's a group of us, we're going to rebuild the greenhouse at Marysville Pilchuck High School. I need help with that. We're going to tear out some creosote beams here in the next few days. I've got a trailer and a saw. We're going to dig it out. There are two incredible teachers there who are ready to get a horticulture program going again, which we lost 20 years ago. Okay? So, folks, take responsibility. Don't sit and complain and point fingers only. It's okay to do the finger pointing as long as we take responsibility also. Take responsibility.
Is it listened to again?
Can I just very quickly say, there are some of us parents who have been working very hard to try to make change happen and taking responsibility for what's going on, and no one is listening.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
Thank you.
Has to do with totem, so can I follow that?
Sure.
So my question has to do with the closure of totem. Almost anybody in the service center who has something to do with SPED will tell you that totem is our best special education program for middle schools, and it is the one slotted for closure. I have children that go there myself. So my question is if we're closing totem, which has the best program for our special education students, what are we doing with that? And also, what is the process for closing schools? Because I've been told by Bonnie Walker, they plan on keeping open doors on the Totem campus after the school closes.
I have an answer for that.
Okay, that actual question needs to go to the school district. I don't think that's something our community members should be responding to. Thank you.
But to the district itself, who at the district do I ask about that? Because honestly,
we've got Connor Krebs here who's
who's going to
listening.
stand up for our SPED students at the middle school level when they're bullied and transferred on admin transfers, and those 3 from MMS to Totem last school year alone? And you're gonna close the school that supports our SPED students. So if you wanna set up a time to talk to me or anybody I know in the SPED department, I'm willing to talk to you and give you everything I have, because I have recordings of IEP meetings. Speaking directly to you, I have recordings of IEP meetings, I have emails, I can show you proof of egregious violations of accommodations, of principals at specific schools, warehousing SPED students and then being transferred to a school with even higher need students. I have proof of a high school principal who has stated let me see if I can remember exactly what I heard, that she refuses to lower her standards for students who have special needs because they can figure out how to raise themselves up. And anybody who knows who I'm talking about, well, there's some cronyism in there too. So I would love to have a sit down with you and tell you all about it if you'd like.
All right.
I wasn't starting in that direction, but might as well go there.
You're fine, you're fine. Real quickly, Courtney Ramirez, thank you so much. She has to go because she has to work in the morning. We're waiting for a teacher. All right, and I am gonna move to another question online.
Okay, so the next one is the superintendent's evaluation done by the board on July 1st accessible to the public?
Is the evaluation of the superintendent that is supposed to be done on July 1st available to the public? And that is done by the board. I am seeing a nod. Yes, that is confirmed from Connor Krebs that it will be made public. All right, and I saw a hand or two over there. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I disagree with Lana. I taught for 38 years, 26 in Marysville. I'm retired. I volunteer at a school, elementary school, every single week, 2-3 times a week. I think the reason that the kids are out of control is because we are short-staffed. There are not enough substitutes, so paras do not get substitutes. I sat for 2 years and I get called in bed to come to work. I worked 104 days last year, and I didn't want to. But they needed me, so I did. I'm not doing it anymore, but I'm gonna volunteer more because they need adults and good role models.
We had one para substitute the entire school year this last year, and we had multiple absences. One spot was filled. I originally had applied to be a substitute within the district as a para, never heard back about the job. Applied for the job that I have now, which is a half-time job, got a call about it, luckily I was able to get in. Not a single word back about the substitution job.
There are teachers that have just
got their certificates and they're not hiring them. They're not even responding to their emails. So I'm sorry, I don't agree at all.
I will say this year, and in previous years, like at least a couple of my teachers had to sacrifice their planning periods to go cover for another teacher. It happens every single day, the entire school year. There are not enough people. There are not enough teachers. There are not enough subs.
Thank you. Debbie.
So Marysville used to be a place where people wanted to work. 32 years ago, when I got on the list for care posts, there was a waiting list. You had to wait to get on the list when it opened, and then they would close it because we had far too many employees. People wanted to be here. So I want us to think about the reason we're all here tonight. Things are not working. We've got a corrupt system in place. We need to focus on getting back to a Marysville that our students deserve, that our staff deserve. We need to work together. Things like, I'm sorry, I'm pro-Levy, I'm pro-bond. Things like that will follow. We need a strong team of community members who are going to stand together and say enough is enough. We're not standing for this. We need change, and then work together for our students to make Marysville good again.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Ma'am, you've been waiting forever. It is your turn.
My apologies, we're new to the party, been married for almost a year and a half. Have you seen an increase in educational attorneys that are being contracted against Marysville School District?
I can't find one. Yes, I was told to find one, I can't find one.
As he said, most of them.
So the question was, and help me rephrase that, sorry.
Have you seen an increase in educational attorneys that are being contracted to go against Marysville School District?
Have we seen an increase in educational attorneys contracted to go against the school district? Families retaining legal counsel, essentially. Okay, I'm looking around the room, I see some significant head nods from folks that no.
So, yeah.
But I cannot attest to that. So that might be definitely a community answer is head nodding yes.
On your comment about the squeaky wheel, do you know, when the other lady said she filed a community complaint to OSPI, is that along the same lines of the same violation complaint to OSPI on behalf of the student providing an IEP and their educational aid?
That was, so if you do read the documentation that's posted on our website, our Facebook group, it does go into what the issues were that we made the complaint against, and it does detail out exactly what OSPI found in violation and what was not proven. So I would urge you to go through that. There is, they definitely found a systemic violation of students' IEPs, their services not being provided to them, among other things. But essentially, there was 3 main issues that were brought forward in that community complaint. That was realistically the one that they did find significant evidence to support a systemic violation of. And the school district has a corrective action plan essentially to prove to OSPI that things are going to be on the right footing. But again, this is a complaint that was not proactively communicated to the school, our community by the school district. So again, said complaint was released to the public by us, not by the school district.
Does OSPI make them do some kind of compensation services?
They're required to provide compensatory services for any student that did not receive their legally entitled to services during the year. And I have somebody who can probably speak to that if she'd like to. Yes.
Do you want to come up here? We have an open seat.
We have an open seat.
What do you want to say about that?
If there's anything else I'm missing.
So far, Jalee's right. Yes to those things. Also, yes to your question about increased legal counsel, but the complaints don't necessarily come with legal counsel. Increased or ongoing concerns that families, like a specific family would have had that repeated conflict with the district. Those are the families that usually retain personal counsel. And I have seen an increase in that. So my role this year was as a special ed coordinator, so like a low-level administrator within special ed.
I would have called you a godsend, honestly. What I went through this year, you were a godsend.
Well, thank you. To answer your question, Elisa, about closing totem, and so one of the things that school districts, just kind of generally to speak to that, is that we don't want a school we don't want stuff for kids, specifically our most vulnerable kids, to be person dependent. So Totem has developed a system that is very person dependent. What we should have is a school system that a kid can go to any school and get those services at that level, and it doesn't matter. That's what's best for kids.
And the
right?
problem is that we can't get that at the other schools.
No, we can get that. We don't have that.
Oh.
Those are different. And so that's what our kids need. So what we need to figure out is what's working for Totem and how and why and how did they get there? And then we need to get our staff to that place. That's what needs to happen, right? So did I answer your question about special ed? Okay, what did I?
I have like students to the same page.
Okay, do you want to connect with me after? Okay. Okay, let's connect after, ma'am, back there, okay.
All right.
Oh, God.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a specific I had a couple emails to one of the message asked me what meaningful communication looks like to me. And one of the major points is we need to have communication from the district be in different languages. It cannot just be in English. We have many families that have English as a second language. We have many Spanish-speaking families, many Russian-speaking families, and all of these are only coming out in English, and to me that's completely inaccurate, considering where we are at in the districts, especially with talks of school closures. And especially when two of those schools deal with a lot of families that have English as a second language or don't speak English.
All right, we are going to take two more questions. If anybody's watching, the time is after 9. So I'm hungry, I don't know about you. We're gonna take one from online.
Okay, so last one from online. Someone asked, can the school board require the superintendent to interview or hire executive directors via committee rather than on his own?
The question is, can the school board require, say that one more time for me.
Can the school board require the superintendent to interview or hire executive directors via committee rather than on his own?
Can the school board require the superintendent to hire via committee versus what he's doing now, essentially? Connor's gonna speak to that.
Come sit down here, sir.
Yeah.
You're in the hot seat, yes.
So the board's intent for the 3 executive director positions that are open and for executive director positions that may be open in the future. Look, for the 3 right now, our intention is to slow down. Although there might be a desire to fill those positions quickly, I think slowing down, involving community, taking, allowing time for highly qualified, motivated individuals to apply for the position. That's our position right now. I think we are working on some potential interims that can fill in those positions for the time being, just kind of temporary to help the district be able to operate efficiently and effectively. But our intention for hiring permanent executive directors is for the board to take a more intentional role in that process, and also for the community to have input in that process. Because if what Marysville is going through right now highlights anything, I would say that the conglomerate of executive directors play a far more vital role to the district than even one good superintendent would for the district. So being intentional about who we hire is the board's position on that question.
And I would add to that with my own personal opinion on that last statement about a conglomerate of executive directors is more important to have competency, right? Versus the superintendent with an asterisk. As long as our executive directors feel that they can stand up and freely speak their mind without intimidation, bullying, or any of those things from the superintendent or board members or staff. Yes. All right. One last question. Anybody got a burning one? Otherwise, we'll take one from online. Annie?
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
I promise that I will volunteer my time as a professional investigator. I worked as a professional investigator for 12 years. I'm running a campaign right now, so I'm pretty stinking busy. But I promise that I will get information from these wonderful people, and I will investigate this, and I will make sure that the district, that the people responsible are held accountable. If you have any questions for me about this or any other questions at all, I do have flyers here you can take, where I will post my contact information in the community forum, if that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. All right, I know everybody has been hanging out for hours now. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I really, really do appreciate the turnout, and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you'd like my information,